And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Nick Yoder with Harmony Academy at National University, and I am thrilled to be your moderator today on this important topic impacting many schools today, creating harmony and belonging as a solution to chronic absenteeism. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat as we go ahead and start our today's webinar. For today's webinar, we are thrilled to bring together thought leaders in education that both inspire school leaders and educators who support the social, emotional, and academic learning in our schools. We're grateful to have EdWeek as the host today and for allowing us to present the content from our leaders in Harmony. Harmony Academy is honored to be powered by National University, where the university delivers an accessible, world-class student experience with our quality programs and services, ensuring student success through meaningful learning, supporting non-traditional, working, and veteran students. Our quality programs include Harmony Curriculum and Harmony Plus, providing you relationship-driven solutions in schools, communities, and at homes. Harmony Academy is proud to be in over 57,000 schools, reaching over 23 million students in 80 countries. I'll tell you a bit more about Harmony during our poll question. Now, let's dive into what we will discuss today and our objectives for the webinar today. So we really want to explore kind of the research around the factors that increase students a sense of belonging, that help reduce chronic absenteeism, discover the key strategies that have supported Clark County School District that build engagement and connection, and then get a sneak peek into Harmony Plus, where we have new resources that are helping teachers and leaders develop the skill sets to continue to build healthy relationships while still enjoying the joy of learning in their classrooms. But let's first take a poll question and reflect back to our elementary school days. So what created that sense of enjoyment and engagement that helped you want to attend school? So what were you most excited about when you attended school? Being with your friends, playing games at recess or PE, learning from your favorite teacher, studying your favorite teacher, all of the above. Go ahead and give a few minutes to think about those days just a few years back and respond to those questions on your screen. Again, what were those times? So as you think about that question, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Harmony Curriculum. So guided by the latest research in social and emotional development, our programs equip educators with on-demand, comprehensive classroom resources that equip healthy relationships, promote diversity and inclusion, and encourage enthusiastic and engaged learning that can ignite positive lifelong outcomes. We partner with school districts and world-class organizations that bring resources to students around the globe. In addition, we are working with the U.S. Department of Education grant, where we're really trying to think about social, emotional, academic development and how to really kind of embed and integrate those concepts. We will share links to our resources at the end of the webinar. We will learn more about all of our resources. All right, take a few more seconds as we close out this poll. Again, thinking back to those elementary days, what were you most excited about when attending school? 28% of you really were excited about being with your friends, 7% recess, 15% learning from your favorite teacher, 4% studying your favorite subject, 42% all the above, 1% none of the above. So it looks like you all enjoyed all of those things at school. So that was super exciting that you enjoyed all of those things, and all of those things together made you feel that you had a sense of belonging and connection to the school community. So great, thank you so much for participating in our poll today. Now, let's get to our panelists. So it is my pleasure to introduce this powerhouse panelist who will be diving into further what helps students want to be in school, to feel that they're engaged and that they belong. First, we have Dr. Fisher, who is a professor of educational leadership at San Diego State University. He is a teacher leader at Health Sciences, High and Middle School, an award-winning open enrollment public school in San Diego he co-founded in 2007. Welcome, Doug. We also have Dr. Milliron, an award-winning leader, author, speaker, and consultant. He serves as the president and CEO of National University, one of the largest nonprofit universities in the United States. Dr. Milliron helps catalyze positive change in education through his service on the boards and advisory councils of leading edge education organizations. Welcome, Mark. And with a remarkable 26-year tenure serving Clark County School District families, Ms. Denise Diaz has a rich background in education, dedicating 16 years to the classroom, and is now the Executive Director of the Engagement Unit, Clark County School District. She leads the 12 district-wide family engagement centers that are increasing engagement through identifying, creating, and fostering opportunities for two-way meaningful communication with families, schools, and the community. Ms. Diaz's work with the centers has served as a national model, inspiring districts across the U.S. with her innovative approach to improving education. Welcome, Denise. So thank you all three for being here with us today. And so we're going to have a very lively discussion about the strategies to really reduce chronic absenteeism. But before we get started, we're going to start with one of Harmony's quick connection cards. And so our first quick connection card that really helps build community that I want you all three to answer. What do you like best about being at school? Or what did you like best about being at school? So Denise, let's start with you.
Well, I'm a bit of a social butterfly. So I would definitely and just be part of the community. So definitely the social part of school is my favorite.
Great. Thanks, Denise. I think you were lagging a little bit. Mark, what about you?
I'll be as frank as I can be. In my early days, I was the kid who loved recess, mainly because I really wanted to get outside and be active. And then I fell in love with learning later. The right teachers showed up at the right time and just really kind of sparked my interest and helped me kind of catch fire. And then by the time I got to college, it would turn into a full-blown forest fire. I kind of fell in love with the process of learning. But it really was this kind of interconnection. It's one of the reasons I'm very clear that learning is a mind-body thing. It's a whole human thing if you do it right.
Great. And Doug?
Awesome. I love learning in school, but my mom was the library aide at my elementary school. So anytime I got in trouble, I went to the library and she would have me read. And that is what I remember most about elementary school is the absolute volume of reading that I had the opportunity to do.
Great. Thank you so much. So you all have a very fond memories and liking very different things about school. So thank you so much. So let's dig into our conversation around chronic absenteeism, sense of belonging, and engagement in schools. And for all you out there who are listening, if you have questions for our panelists throughout, there will definitely be time to ask these questions throughout. There is a QA at the bottom, so please go ahead and put your questions for the panelists in that QA. We will try to get to as many as we can, and definitely continue your conversation in the chat with the other participants in the conversation as well. So Doug, I want to start with you in this. Can you tell me a little bit about the latest statistics around chronic absenteeism for students in our nation's schools, and why has it become a crisis in our schools post-pandemic?
Great question. So yes, chronic absenteeism was really bad when we came back from remote learning. It is improving, so we do want to recognize that somewhat heroic efforts of school systems to get kids back in school and back learning. In general, it hasn't returned to pre-pandemic rates of attendance. We're still seeing a gap there, but it is improving in part because of the efforts that people are discussing and talking about and what we're learning from. The synthesis that came out not too long ago was that approximately, on average, 1/3 of absences are illness related. And there's a valid reason not to come to school when you're sick. You don't want to get other people sick. You don't feel like it. It's hard to learn. There's all kinds of things like that. But that means a lot of absenteeism is not related to illness. The two biggest next issues are bullying and feeling academically unprepared for school. And if you feel like you're going to be a failure over and over again, and be demoralized in the classroom, you'll probably figure out other things to do. If you don't feel safe because of what's happening to you verbally or physically in terms of bullying, you're gonna figure out ways to not go to school. And one of the interesting things is that teachers say to kids all the time, you can learn from your mistakes, you can learn from your failures. It is true, our brain can do that. It's just that we don't like it. It's not fun to be wrong all the time. We actually learn better from our successes. We know that it floods the reward pathways, it feels great, and success is motivational. And if you experience failure after failure after failure, at some point you're going to say, why do I go to that place where I experience failure over and over again? What will it take for educators to allow students to experience success and then raise the challenge? What will it take for educators to recognize the impact that bullying is having on young people? And if we could clean up those two factors, attendance rates would go back up. Students are just less tolerant now of those things because they know what staying home felt like.
Great. Thanks so much, Doug. That really explains a lot about why kids are not coming to school. And Denise, can you explain a little bit? Like, are you seeing similar patterns to what Doug was saying in Clark County related to chronic absenteeism?
Yes, I would agree, Dr. Fisher. We are seeing the same types of challenges with our families that our families are facing. A lot of it in our home visits. We conducted 38,000 home visits in the 23-24 school year. We also conducted superintendent home visits. And from conversations with families and the students in the homes who were obviously home because they weren't at school, some of those kind of had to do with the student engagement. Students don't feel that they had a voice to be able to express what their needs and interests are in education. And the parents are having a difficult time getting the students because there is no sense of belonging. So really working on all of those factors with our educators, with our community partners, and having that consistent messaging to empower and motivate and get behind our kiddos is important. We have to find ways to engage them in not just education, because we have to address those root causes of what is going on with our kids and chronic absenteeism today.
I saw a comment in there quickly. Brian wrote and said about the relationship between mental health and chronic absenteeism. That's the next one on the list. So it goes illness, it goes bullying, academically unprepared, and then wellness and mental health. So I saw that coming. We can go down the top 6, but that's number 4 in terms of impact, is around mental health and lack of counseling and emotional support and general sense of well-being.
Great. Thanks, Denise and Doug. And so, Mark, I want to turn to you. And can you talk a little bit about how chronic absenteeism in the K-12 space is also influencing higher education, specifically thinking about teacher preparation and retention?
Yeah, it's interesting in listening to Doug and Denise talking about the conversation. It brings up something personal for me, and that and kind of a sense of empathy around this issue. I was put into school a year early. I was always young for my age. I went through some horrible bullying for probably my first 6 or 7 grades in school. It didn't get better until I got bigger. So now I'm 6'4", 240. Totally different kind of, but when I was young, it was a lot of bullying going through school. So school was not fun. It was actually, that's why recess was more fun. Getting out was more fun. And that's actually why, as I transitioned and I got bigger, and probably just people decided not to bully, I said I went to a different place by the time I got into higher ed. That combined with the fact that my family, I come from a really rowdy family. Nick, you know this. I come from a family of 9 kids. I have an African-American brother, Native American brother, Korean sister, family adopted. But in addition to that, my mom was a vocational nurse. My dad was in the Navy. And they got really passionate about foster care. So in addition to our family, we also welcomed about 25 different foster kids through our house during the time I was growing up. And they were all special needs kids. They were kids who came from abusive backgrounds, or they had health issues as they were coming through. And one of the things I learned in that context is just the idea of understanding from when somebody comes, right? And understanding that it's, the idea of that context for that person is a big deal to understand what they're bringing to the learning environment. All the fast forward all the way to the work we've been doing in higher education around student success, and we've led a bunch of work. And what we've basically found is it is really, for example, it's really hard to learn if you're hungry. It's really hard to learn if you have mental health issues. It's really hard to learn if you don't feel safe. And that is in higher education, not even in K-12. And I would argue, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, what we're trying to create is a larger context where we're trying to create healthy learning environments. And healthy learning environments is kind of like trying to bring together the work we're doing on DEI, SEL, thriving, mental health, and basic needs, trying to pull it all together in a way where we create a more healthy environment so somebody can really focus on the deeper learning in a clear way. So at National University, for example, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give is with our rising teachers to try to model it, to say, can we create a healthy learning environment for our rising teachers so they can kind of see what it looks like? I would argue many universities are more Darwinian than developmental, right? It is not creating a healthy learning environment for rising scholars. And what we want to do is our kind of theory of change is we want to use next generation education, which, by the way, isn't just about tech. It's about new models, new strategies, combined with technology and techniques, and then combine that with whole human education. And whole human education is really this idea of having the right resource at the right time, the right scaffold, the right support. And that might mean, by the way, getting out of the way of a high ability student, or it might mean providing basic needs support or providing mental health support, whatever that is. We believe next gen education wrapped in whole human, aimed at value rich education, which is an education that is not just about completing a degree or completing a diploma. It is literally about learning well, finishing strong, launching effectively, creating this holistic support around them so they can get credentials, connections, experiences that are transformative. So we want our students to experience that with us and hopefully bring that forward. And then we're combining that with the partnership we have with our Harmony program. And Harmony is the Harmony Academies that are some of the most powerful SEL work in the country. Nothing would be more ironic than for us not to walk that talk. Like, we want to create that kind of healthy learning environment for our students. So this is both personal and professional for me. Like, can we as educators come together and create healthier learning environments for our folks so they can rise and thrive?
Thanks, Mark. So you definitely started moving the conversation into solutions for battling chronic absenteeism and getting people back into schools. And, one of those is building those healthy learning environments and beginning that modeling and coaching and support structures for educators, right? Starting in teacher preparation and what they experience as students, so that they begin to model that for them for their kids. Doug, can you begin to also speak to what does some of the literature say around some of those solutions to support chronic absenteeism based on the factors that you've identified in the literature?
So we've already named one of them, and I'll just use the word belonging. Belonging has a highly protective effect on absenteeism and on learning, by the way. It's also highly protective on suicidal ideation and depression. So we all use Jeff Cohen at Stanford's definition. Belonging is a feeling that we are part of a larger group that values, respects, and cares about us, and to which we can contribute. And Jeff argues that people often miss the last piece of a belonging definition, is that we feel the need to contribute when we belong. But value, respect, and care is also important, that it's a feeling, it's an emotional reaction, it's an emotional aspect for us, and we're part of a group. All of that goes into belonging. And so when young people feel a sense of belonging, that means they're respected, cared for, valued, they can contribute, they have that feeling. And the way I thought about this, and when I first read Jeff's work, was I bet every one of us as an adult has opened a door to a room and there's been a meeting going on in there and we weren't invited. We weren't supposed to be there. And we kind of make ourselves small and we close the door and we apologize. And, it's that shame feeling like, oh, I'm so embarrassed and all that. Imagine that was your day, that all day long you had that feeling of opening that door to a meeting where you weren't supposed to be. How likely are you to go there? So that's one area of evidence, is around the sense of belonging, the climate and culture of a classroom. People often ask me why I care so much about student-teacher relationships, because the effect size is average. Why do I care so much about student-teacher relationships? Because they make the environment safe. When you have a great relationship with the teacher, it's about, this place is safe. These four walls feel safe. This online learning community feels safe. That's the power of the student-teacher. We're not looking for friends for Saturday as adults. What we're looking for is creating climates where we allow learning. We allow young people to be themselves, to figure out who they are, to figure out what their aspirations are and how to reach those aspirations. And that happens in the climate of the classroom. We could also talk about mental health services, wellness services. We could talk about social emotional development. We can talk about things like, when students do things wrong and make mistakes, what are the consequences for them? Are they banished from the community and those kinds of things? All of that goes into this overall sense of, I should go to school, I need to go to school. I saw in the comments earlier as well about bullying, and the evidence is that there's a group of people who think there's nothing we can do about it and that it's a part of life growing up. And that's mistaken, it's incorrect, and it's hurting a lot of kids. There's another perspective that bullying is exaggerated and that it's not as big of a deal or big of an impact. So I think there's a bit of dismissiveness around the bullying issues that we have to attend to and deal with. Here's an example. A friend of mine, family, their daughter was bullied pretty badly in middle school. The solution from the administrator was to take her out of the advanced choir and put her in beginning choir because the bullies were in advanced choir. That was a solution. It's this fast, did it. The kid ended up leaving middle school, and we re-enrolled her after a lot of conversation into another school, a different school, a choice school, to allow that to be healed. But that administrator made a decision. You don't get to be in advanced choir anymore because your bullies are in advanced choir. So as the second most common reason why young people miss school, we should be dealing with the bystanders, the witnesses, the adults in the community. Bullying is hurtful. It feels unsafe, and it actually moves into violence.
Thanks, Doug. Mark, can you elaborate on some of the things that National's doing and the Harmony Academy is doing to really kind of build the bridge between pre-service and in-service to help build classroom culture, affirmative learning environments, and really trying to build that trust and those pieces that Doug are talking about, and really building that into action?
Yeah, and I can't more yes and Doug's comments than possible. I mean, it is the belonging element is such a big deal. And here's the thing: like a national university, we are a university that was created by a Navy captain, PhD, was heartbroken watching service members trying to access traditional education after the Vietnam War, and finding that there was no accommodations for somebody who was working or a parent or whatever it was going to be. And he wanted to create a different kind of university that would meet the needs of non-traditional working and military students. So by design, we're focused on working students, non-traditional, military, and very diverse. We're 70% diverse in our student population. That has given us a design mind to try to meet people where they are, to help them go on the journeys they want to go on. And especially in this kind of focus of creating healthy learning environments, I'll just give you a concrete example. A lot of our learners learn asynchronously and online, and they do all kinds of like project work and all the rest. But they often, even though they're learning online, they still sometimes need a safe place to learn. They need a quiet place to learn. They need high-speed internet. They often need just-in-time support, and often 70% of our students are women. They need childcare. So we've been partnering with local YMCAs, and we've been creating these things we're calling healthy learning centers, or nests. Our mascot is a peregrine falcon. So the nest is kind of a home away from home. And the idea is that they don't want classrooms, but they want to be somewhere where they see other people like them and they have a sense of belonging and connectedness. It's not going to be for all of our students, but for a big chunk of our students, it could be a thing. Same thing with our near peer work. We're using students who've been successful in that course. And if you're a late in life learner who's coming back, who's unsure about your success, and then you suddenly have somebody who's just like you, who's succeeded in that course, serving as your near peer, boy, you're more likely to be successful. So there are concrete things you can do in the learning environment to, again, create a healthier, connected learning environment. By the way, this does not mean making it easier. This does not mean, we believe deeply in access and equity can be combined with real striving towards academic excellence. Both those things in. But the idea of, again, meeting people where they are and getting them on their journey becomes a big deal. If our teachers experience that as they're going through their program, they're more likely to give that as a gift to their own learners. The idea of understanding of how do you create that learning environment. Combine that with the work of the NU Harmony Academies, and you're seeing they're learning these core skills in, again, focusing on mental health and building relationships and building social emotional learning and capacity. In fact, we even have the ability for folks to be able to take their SEL, their Harmony certifications come right into our master's program and kind of accelerate right through. We're trying to create models where that learner really walks away from us in that educational program and then is able to put that right into practice in the classroom. Again, nothing would be more ironic than for us to teach them to teach in a way that is Darwinian and savaging when they're actually learning about SEL and trying to do this kind of, we actually have to have a holistic environment. We actually have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. I think it's one of the reasons why the partnership between our Harmony Academies and our work with our Stanford College of Education have been so powerful, because the interaction just allows for a broader conversation about how do you create these healthy, challenging environments for our folks. The bureaucracy, and we always say the learning should be challenging, not the bureaucracy and the context, right? And one of the things I love to say is there is not a privileged parent on the planet that does not want their child to go into a healthy learning environment. In fact, they'll fight for it. They'll bring in lawyers if they have to, whatever it's going to be. And I've seen it. I've worked with these high-end independent schools where that's what happens in those environments. In our broader schooling across the United States, we owe it to try to create more healthy learning environments so more students can rise and thrive. Sorry, I'm not passionate about this at all.
I couldn't tell, Mark. I could not tell. Denise, I want to turn to you a little bit, right? Because I mean, you've been combating this now, for a number of years in Clark County and have been super engaged with families. And Clark County has taken a very comprehensive approach, reducing chronic absenteeism by 9% last academic year. What is that approach you've been taking? And right, like right, Mark. Congratulations, you all. What are some of those strategies you all been doing? People want to know.
Yeah, so thank you for that. It takes a village. I mean, nobody can do this alone. It definitely has to be a comprehensive approach, and it has to be widespread across the district. To give you a bit of an idea, the Clark County School District is the 5th largest school district. We have just over 300,000 students in our district. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is we look at the whole child, but we have to also look at the whole family. And so when we come to our families, we want to serve them in the way that it needs, response to their needs. So that's going to vary. You can't just do one strategy. And family engagement is a strategy. It's a mindset. It's a belief system. And incorporating that into our schools and ensuring that we have those safe spaces, not just for students, but for families and community members to come together and as stakeholders be able to support our kids. There's not one family that you will meet that doesn't have hopes and dreams for their kids. And it's about seeing the families as a support system and not something that gets in the way. We've been fortunate enough to have the Education Services Department, ESD, in the Clark County School District, and they dedicated some of their dollars into funding a director of chronic absenteeism. So with that, leading force, they've been able to do an extensive amount of home visits, not just during the school year, but they also went out all summer long and they met with 5,000 students who were not enrolled in the previous school year so that they could address and see what those needs are: daycare, health, transportation, a sense of belonging, bullying, as Dr. Fisher said. So looking at all of the different things. So when we look at chronic absenteeism in a district this large, we have to think about professional development for our teachers and our staff and our school leaders. And we've been fortunate enough to partner with Harmony to do exactly that and have a certification program for them to engage in. And we had a ridiculous response to that opportunity, and I'm sure Nick will talk a little bit about it, but we're very proud of the thirst that is out there for the professionals in our district to be seeking that type of professional learning. That says a lot about everyone being on the same page and having those same motivations. So having the professional learning and then having a space, not just like we said, students, but families need to feel welcome. So we're fortunate to have 12 family engagement centers located throughout the school district. And we also have a Clark County School District Family Support Center, which welcomes our newcomers and our refugee families, so that when they come to this country, they can also have that sense of belonging, support them with the resources, and have them understand why. There are a lot of cultural reasons that we may need to express more to our families so that they can feel successful in school. So those are some of the things that we're doing. And then we're partnering with our stakeholders, such as we have the county has an attendance enforcement program. So we've been partnering with them as well, and understanding that it's a campaign. The messaging needs to be the same. Our community partners that are out there, our business owners, they need to know what are the school hours. If you're still serving, In-N-Out Burger is having a special, let's not have it during the day when students should be in school rather than participating in other things. So our business owners need to also have that same messaging. So we've been doing a social media campaign, Everyday Matters, throughout the district and into the community. We offer our families learning opportunities through the University of Family Learning. And in the University of Family Learning, they're able to address all different areas of support for that family to experience success and build their family efficacy. So, hard to identify just one thing, because I feel that you really have to be able to expose our families and our students and our community members to all of the right things in order to support our kiddos and making sure that they get to school.
Yeah, you've just noted all of you have really noted a really comprehensive approach to addressing chronic absenteeism. And why do you think it's so important that it is a comprehensive approach and it's not just a one thing? And I know you've all kind of like touched on it, why it's important not to just do kind of one thing, but can you kind of just say, why is it so important to create this kind of comprehensive solution for combating chronic absenteeism and creating this sense of belonging and engagement and support structure, and not just having a one point solution for any of these, right? Because it is a multi-pronged solution that we need. Can you all speak a little bit to this need for this comprehensive approach?
I can start with saying the reasons students are absent are varied. So a single solution is only going to move a certain needle forward on one factor. The other reality is it might be have a great sense of belonging, but I still feel academically unprepared or have mental illness or wellness issues. And I saw in the chat, someone asked me around feeling that the teacher doesn't like me. That is also part of the climate of school. It has a negative impact on learning. And students, they accurately can say who are the kids in class the teacher doesn't like. And there have been several studies on this. Kids know it, and the effect persists into the next year with a new teacher. And it contributes to this whole environment of, I don't belong here, I'm not learning here, I feel like I'm struggling here, and then my family has stressors, it's easier for me to stay home. That's why we need these multi-pronged, multi-component interventions, as they're now talked about in the literature, because there's many overlapping areas about why this exists the way it exists.
So I know we don't have this question specifically in the chat. So, but I know you've all kind of addressed this and work on this to some way.
Hey,
Is
Nick, before you jump on, can I jump in?
Sorry.
I'd love to get I'd love to get Denise's take on this too as well. The comprehensive question is an important one because I've worked in the education foundation world for a long time. I used to be a leader with the Gates Foundation, chair of the board of the Trellis Foundation, been a part of the Grant Makers for Education for a long time. And one thing that is challenging is kind of the random acts of innovation that are out there that are really well-meaning, but you end up getting pilot effect sizes all over the place and nothing at scale that really makes a difference. So one of the things we have to do, I think, especially as we think about creating these environments in a more holistic way, is we've got to be willing to think big and develop what is our theory of change, right? And so we think these ingredients put together into a recipe is going to lead to great outcomes for our students. So I mentioned earlier, our theory of change at National is next generation education, which is technologies, tools, techniques, policies, and practices that are pushing the boundary in education, wrapped in whole human, aimed at value-rich education. That is our theory of change, and we've unpacked that in our strat plan. Like, I would challenge anybody who wants to think about this to figure out what is your recipe, right? What are your ingredients you're going to put in there? And some of the key things to keep in mind, I would argue, is you got to think about how we pull together the work we're doing on social justice, DEI, the work we're doing on basic needs, the work we're doing on SEL, the work we're doing on physical thriving, the work we're doing on mental health, and figure out, like, have the policy conversations, the practice conversations, reflect on what's working and what's not, do the research, and figure out what is your recipe and at least try it, right? And then that's where we can develop kind of a community of practice and really compare recipes, figure out what's working in which context. And I don't think we're going to get to scale with the strategies we need in this environment until we start doing that work together. That's where kind of learning, that's one of the things I love about the Harmony Academies is you've got this kind of like rowdy community of practice that's willing to come together. Clark County is one of the top and most rowdy, which we love. It's like trying hard to kind of drive change at scale, but we're going to have to do some big thinking in that. Denise, I love your take on that because, again, I'm calling you out as one of the best good troublemakers out there in this.
I like that. I think I fit that description pretty well. But, you know, as you both have said beautifully, it really is a comprehensive approach, and having opportunity for students to also have a voice. I've heard Dr. Fisher talk about, do we know what's afflicting the students and, the bullying and what they're feeling at school. And one of the things that we've been doing as well is making sure that students do have a voice. So the superintendent hosts student advisory council meetings. And so each high school sends 2 representatives from their school to sit with the superintendent and address those needs. They discuss root causes. They have conversations around now what, kind of as you said, we can throw a bunch of things at the wall to see what sticks, but are we going to move the needle with those things? So having conversations from a student perspective has been a very powerful tool in helping the rest of us ensure that we're on the right track. And the same should be said for parents. And so in our engagement center, same thing, having parent groups where they can get organized and have conversations and feel safe to say the things that they're feeling and experiencing, so that we can develop those comprehensive approaches that are going to make a difference, and not just, talking in circles and no action as a result. So I do feel that we need to look at different ways to engage those stakeholders, because not all parents are going to show up to those groups, because it's about relationships and trust. So if we haven't communicated in a way that is relational to our families and have built and established that, we're not going to have them necessarily be the ones to come to a meeting forum. So what do we do if that's not going to work for most of our families? Surveys, we can survey families to death to find out their needs, but not all families are going to be able to fill out those surveys or will not return it. So again, goes back to relationships and developing those conversations and ensuring that we're really truly understanding the needs and always keeping in mind that we are needs-based service, and it has to change as much as their needs change, and we have to flow with them. So yeah, I would agree to all those.
To me, this is a follow-up question, and I think one of the things people might, or at least one of the things that comes to mind for me, is if we're having this comprehensive solution, and it also goes to your point of a theory of change, and then also data, Denise, is how do we actually know, how do we identify then that solution that's going to work for a kid, right? Because if there's like Doug, to your point, like if a kid might feel like they belong, but they might not have a good mental health support, how do I identify those solutions, and like what data are we capturing, or how do we create, or how do we create like a data infrastructure, or how do we know what's keeping a kid from attending school, and then creating those solutions then that will work for the kid or the family that's going to work for them. Have you seen any good data infrastructures that then can work for schools and families?
So I really think that it is school by school. If the school themselves have a strong wraparound services team that are addressing all these different pieces, and we have community partners that we can also refer and assist families, not just refer, because referring a family to receive services oftentimes is not going to bring any type of solution for that family. We have to sometimes walk alongside our families and ensure that they get what they need. One of the ways we do that is through the Harmony curriculum in our family engagement centers. Our families have just embraced that curriculum so much, and the conversations that they have had have been so robust about what it has meant to them as a family, and being able to have conversations about what my child needs, because some of our parents have said, I don't know how to connect with my child. We're in a digital world where students are, on their phones, and parents aren't sure how to bring up those conversations. So we've been able to build our families up and build their confidence up in order to have these conversations. And so with schools in mind, if we have strong teams at school, which is why the professional learning is so important that we're offering to them through national, they're able to then see what the need is and then ensure that that's in place at their school. When we go to home visits, we know that students will say, I connect with this particular teacher, finding out who that is on campus, who's your safe adult, and then making sure that after you do these home visits, there's follow through. Because there's nothing worse than, great, you did this great thing, but what next? How do we continue to provide that level of support that ensures that we get the outcomes at the end?
Thanks, Denise.
Nick, I got a couple questions about multi-component interventions, and I want to make a comment, because you can also fragment it too much, where everyone's working at odds with each other. So I was at a school in Fresno, Awani, and I was on a visit with the principal, and all of a sudden her timer went off on her watch, and we ran across campus, and I'm like, what's going on? Is there a crisis or whatever? And we were headed to a huddle, a 15-minute standing meeting, administrator's counselor, a rotating teacher, and the attendance clerk. And we spent 15 minutes talking about a specific group of students. We started off with successes from the last week, and then we looked at priorities for today. And every person in that standing huddle left with a job to do. Some were more in the counseling vein. Some were more in communicating with families. Some were more in some tutoring and academic supports. Some were more social emotional in nature. But in 15 minutes, that team wrapped up successes from the past and priorities from today. The attendance clerk knows so much about what's going on, but often doesn't have a voice and sits in the office somewhere entering data into a computer rather than talking to people who can do something about this. So we adopted that 2 years ago at the school I'm standing in right now, and we have a daily attendance huddle where we coordinate the components of our interventions for attendance. Every single day that team meets. The power of a rotating teacher in there is that the teacher brings classroom perspective of what's happening, and also goes out there and talks to other colleagues about the value of attendance. The administration is serious about it. And here are the kids we're working on right now. And it is a very powerful way to coordinate the various components that you have for your attendance.
Thanks, Doug. We have quite a few Q&A questions, so I'm going to move to a few of the Q&A questions, actually. So one of the a panelist a participant asked, how do you handle a reluctant educator or another adult in the building who isn't super supportive of SEL or belonging or kind of engagement strategies and kind of the what people might say touchy-feely things? This can be for anybody.
I'll tell you one thing.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, you go, Denise. I'm gonna listen.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that we talk about this at our conferences all the time, because you're gonna have naysayers. Without a doubt, no matter where you are, you're gonna run across that. And I think that, like any employee that you're looking to try to motivate and inspire, you have to look at what makes that person tick. And having them see the benefits is probably the best way. And pointing it out. But the buy-in has to be there. And we can't inundate our teachers with initiatives and give them so many initiatives that they can't handle them all, right? So we have to have a very laser-focused approach to the way that we engage our families and support those and move them in the same direction as the others. You're not always going to hit that naysayer, but if you can get others around, it can be contagious. And so the goal would be to have that positive environment seen by that naysayer, who then sees the parent as an asset and not something that is negative.
Okay, can I just add a couple things? I totally agree with everything on that. I'm just going to strategically, if you're going to do this work, just remember it takes courage as you step into this work. You're creating a healthy learning environment for a whole host of kids who really need you to step into it. And if you're going to do this work, get ready, buckle up. Just reality therapy. You're going to have people who are angry, caustic cynics about everything around this, who are often the biggest challenge around it. I mean, many of you know these people quite well. You can name the person. If you can't name the person, you might be that person, just like putting it out. Like, there are challenging people. And then on top of that, I got to tell you, just as problematic are true believers who are way over the top, who think this is going to fix everything, and who forget about the core purposes of the academics and other things we have to do within the schools. And our challenge is often we get up in this dogmatic diatribe between the true believers and the caustic cynics. They're at each other's throat, and they're so loud, they're often psychic bullies, that you can't create the space to have the conversation you need to do this work well. You've got to be able to calm down those caustic cynics, temper those true believers, and create a space for those thoughtful critics, careful advocates who want to use the data Doug was talking about, that you want quantitative, qualitative data, understand what's working and what's not, and be willing to kind of like get in there. But it takes courage, because those voices are loud. And by the way, it's not just in the school building. We did a summit with superintendents around this idea of healthy learning. And one of the things a number of the superintendents talked about, they raised their hand and said, yeah, bullying is one of the biggest problems at our school. And we're saying, oh yeah, we're talking about the bullying. I said, no, you're not hearing me. It's the parents who are bullying us. You come to one of my board meetings and you're going to see like hard conversations happening. So this is not easy work, but it is a time for us to kind of step up and try to create this environment where we can wrestle with this. And you just got to be ready, because you're going to have some people coming out of the woodwork who will suck all your energy. They want all your energy, and you got to figure out how can you put your energy on those people who are trying to do some good work in a good way.
Great. I'm going to continue with the SEL curriculum and then move to a couple questions on handling families. How does an SEL curriculum foster a sense of belonging among diverse student populations, particularly in urban districts? And how does it support adult competencies? So that kind of relates to the last question.
Well, I'll argue that SEL is not for minors. And when Mark was talking, I thought he was going to say the teachers are bullying each other, because that also happens. And
Yeah.
so, and shaming each other and that kind of thing. So these relational skills and trust and friendships and all that's baked into Harmony are not just for minors. And one of the things I learned about this curriculum is when you're forced to teach it to 7-year-olds or 9-year-olds, you start to reflect on your own behavior. You start to reflect on your course of action. You start to think more on strengths than deficits, because that's how the Harmony curriculum is built. And so there is a embedded adult learning that can occur that by just teaching this, I'm starting to think about it, the implications for me, etc. And some adults need a little bit more intervention, but some kids need a little bit more intervention too. And so I think that these are not age dependent on the kinds of things we need to learn.
I love that. I was thinking of how when you're on an airplane, they tell you that you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself before your child. And that's just it, right? That we need to make sure that the adult is also being taken care of in the home, because a healthy adult, whether that's mental, physical, with work and stability, they're going to do a better job of ensuring their child's social emotional health and wellness. So I love that. It's exactly true. We have to have the adult piece in there as well.
Great. I'm gonna continue the conversation to families for our last question. I'm gonna kind of combine 2 questions, and then I'm gonna do a readout on some Harmony things, and then leave you all with some with one final question after talking a little bit about Harmony. So, what are some concrete ways that you can build relationships with families and communities, and how do you handle families that might be a little combative or upset when you're kind of discussing issues of chronic absenteeism or absenteeism in general, when they do get upset when you have conversations with them?
It goes back to relationships, ensuring that when our families come in or you're going to their homes to talk to them about it, we have to be able to take those defenses down and de-escalate the adult by showing them some grace. The automatic assumption when you're knocking at their door is that you're going to judge them. And
Right.
we have to take that judgment out. And so giving them that ability to say, hey, this is what's happening in my home with zero judgment and only love and support is going to have a completely different conversation. We've walked into situations where the second they open the door, it's the blame game. I went to the school and your office clerk said this and she was rude and da-da-da. And then we'll just look at them and say, I can't wait to hear more about your child. We've heard wonderful things. Can you tell me more about the things that your child loves to do? And they're like, wait, what? You want to talk to me about me and my family and what interests we have and where we're at? What do you mean? Because they see it as not a give and take. And so the approach makes all the difference in the way that we engage our families.
Awesome. I'm going to do a quick readout, and then I'm going to ask you to, as I'm doing a quick readout, I want you to think about one more piece of advice that you want to leave everybody about how to support solutions on chronic absenteeism and where to begin in their local community, as I kind of do a couple readouts on the Harmony curriculum. So everybody, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. I do want to just give you a few things on the Harmony curriculum of things that we've just recently developed and launched. So we recently developed classroom kits, which include new grade level literature guides full of lessons developed in collaboration with Dr. Fisher to support social, emotional, and academic learning through popular trade books. These are a great way to build a strong sense of belonging with children's literature, where students have an opportunity to connect to the stories and live their lives and culture shared and celebrated through literature. We are also excited to announce new courses offered that Denise and Mark talked about. as part of our new Harmony Plus model, where school leaders and educators can gain the knowledge and tools through new online microlearnings to promote social and emotional learning across the schools and wider communities. Also within these, we have a nice Harmony Connect platform. It's a social media platform where educators and leaders are building community together to talk about Harmony relationships and their own well-being. Depending upon your state or district policy, you have the potential to earn continuing education credits that you may use toward a master's or doctoral degree at National University. So as we come to a close today, we would also love to hear our panelists' thoughts about what is the most, again, most important thing when thinking about creating that sense of belonging and ways to reduce chronic absenteeism. Also, we invite all of you to download our white paper about the latest research on this topic that we co-authored by our esteemed panelists and myself as well. So as we close out today, and you all kind of do the QR code, if you all want to leave us with your final thought on that next step or that one piece where we all should start to combat chronic absenteeism, that would be great.
I would say acceptance and grace, giving families that opportunity to be able to be vulnerable and feel that they are going to be supported. So again, relationships. That's where it starts. And I would say don't give up, because as Mark mentioned, it's not always easy, but it's worth it.
I appreciate that. So that builds on something I was going to add. Recognize that attendance is changeable. We can impact it, and that there are many reasons why students don't come to school. We have to analyze those and then design our theory of action to change it.
Yeah, and one, just thank you for inviting me to be a part of this larger conversation. Denise and Doug are amazing. Nick, you are leading the charge in some great work. I would just say that I really hope everybody here has the courage to take on this work. It is, I think we challenge our learners often to have the courage to learn, to admit they don't know something and try something new. And I want their courage muscles being used on that, not on trying to manage the social situations of school and the challenging kind of environments. And by the way, it's not just social situations. Sometimes it's basic needs. Sometimes it's mental health issues. Sometimes it's others. So it's, what can we do to help bring that student to a place where they can really engage the true courage to learn? That is a kind of our challenge, to be willing to kind of step into that breach and help make that available to as many students as possible, so that they can help other people down the road too.
Great. Doug, Denise, Mark, thank you so much. And thank you all for participating today and listening in. Please reach out to us at Harmony Academy at National University if you need anything, and taking the time out of your busy day to attend today's webinar. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the conversation, my colleagues. Thanks for the chats.
Thank you, everyone.